Good morning. How is everybody? I bring probably more questions than I do have solutions. I started working for the conservation districts in 1988 at the Central North Canadian River Conservation District. And that district encompasses more of an urban area around El Reno, which since 1988 has become even more urbanized out towards Blaine County and the county line. So it's a broad spectrum, and you see a broad spectrum of customers in that conservation district. But now I work for the North Canadian River 319 program, and that program goes from Canton Dam all the way to Overholser. So that's even a little bit broader spectrum of the type of customers that you see. And what I noticed when I started for the Conservation District in 1988 was they were farmers and ranchers, they were male, they were white, they were in their late 50s, early 60s. 10 years later, I started noticing a little bit broader spectrum of customer. You still had your white farmers and ranchers that were still in their late 50s, but you started seeing more women. You started seeing widows. You started seeing daughters that had inherited land. You started seeing granddaughters, and you started seeing out-of-state landowners. And I think that has continued to grow. We see a lot of young farmers now. The size of the farms for these young farmers is probably larger than the farms that the guys in their late 50s were farming in 1988. What we see now is working farmers. They have a full-time day job or a full-time night job, and they're trying to still farm. In this technology-driven age, I have a large group of producers, don't have a computer, don't want a computer, they could care less about a computer. And I don't think that's going to change. These guys are my age, in their mid to late 50s, in their early 60s, late 60s. They're depending on their grandkids or their sons or their daughters for this technology to a large extent. You know, they're depending on getting their information either at the coffee shop, through FSA newsletters, local conservation district newsletters, the newspaper. That's what they're depending on to get their information. So reaching out to this group, I think still will have to maintain a certain level of just the old-fashioned way of getting in touch with these guys. Another trend I've seen are successful professionals from Oklahoma City coming out and purchasing land. They want it for recreation. They want it for weekend getaways. I've had a businessman sit across my desk when I worked for the Conservation District that heard about the cost share programs from a cousin that was still in the ag communities, saying, yeah, I just bought this 160 acres. He says, it is wonderful. It's got cedars all over it. You know, so when these kind of people come into your office and they find out there's money available to help them take those cedars off when they tragically learn that cedars weren't as great as they thought they were, you know, they're ecstatic. You know what I mean? There's really money to help me do this. So part of the problem I'm having in the work with the North Canadian River project is, for example, the ranchettes. We're seeing more and more of these crop up. And the ranchette is even smaller than the small farm that the Noble Foundation mentioned earlier. These are 10, 15, 20 acre plots of land that at one time was a farm. And they've been broken up, and people are coming out from the city or to get this slice of rural heaven, but they're putting 3 horses and 5 cows on it. And it's hard to reach these people because they're in this in-between niche. They're not really part of an urban group, but they're not really part of a rural group either. And I would, for myself, would really like to have some pointers from anybody that has worked with this group before, because I am having a terrible time trying to reach these people. And if you drive by these areas, like from El Reno, around El Reno on the north and east side to Yukon, and then from Yukon to the outskirts of Oklahoma City, some of these are the most abused lands because they're overgrazed, they're overstocked, their manure is a problem. So if anybody has any suggestions for me today on how they have been successful in reaching these people, I would love to hear them. So, you know, one of the biggest things that we've had success with now in the North Canadian project is just simply word of mouth. But early on in that process, Monty, my coworker up here, Monty Ramming, and Ed Kroll spent time in the coffee shops sitting down with producers and getting that word of mouth going. And for us, that's been successful. But as far as us having a budget for a lot of advertising, for a newsletter, we don't have that. And so I'm open to anything today. And I'm just here to learn, which I told Stacy kind of caught me by surprise.
I actually have a question for you, Debbie.
Oh, good, okay.
With the ranchette owners, I mean, do you have an idea of the age group? Is it a certain age group that's falling into that category?
No, I'm not even sure exactly how to get a demographic on them. I would suspect they're probably 30s and 40s group, just judging when you drive by and you know, see. Many of them work during the day, you know, which makes it hard for the working producers to attend seminars and things too, because on the weekends they're trying to catch up with what they couldn't get done with during the week, and during the week, or they're working when a lot of us do have workshops and seminars. Another problem I see is like people that have become several generations removed from the land, or maybe even a generation, or they've inherited the land, the wife has, lease agreements with renters, working in that conservation management practice into a lease agreement. A lot of them are very hesitant to do that because they're afraid they won't get the land leased, because there's getting to be such a narrow margin of profit on rented land. They don't think anybody will rent it if they have them written in a grazing height that has to be maintained, or other practices that are just good land management practices. So I'm here to learn, and so these are some of the problems I'm seeing. And that's pretty much all I have to say today. So if anybody has any help for me out there, just please feel free to talk to me today.
I have a question. These ranchettes, where like the older people, or I say older people, the older generation farmers go to the coffee shops or whatever, where are these younger ranchettes
That's a good question.
hanging out?
You know, oh, where are the ranchettes people going? I would suspect, and I think a lot of these people are people that have full-time, daytime jobs that maybe, you know, have a very limited ag history background, maybe grandpa or grandma or maybe even dad, and they can't afford the full-scale farming experience, so they come by 10, 15 acres. They want to raise a few little cattle or goats or sheep or chickens, or they're really avid horse people, and so they put 5 horses on 5 acres.
Maybe a feed store.
That's what I was thinking, a feed store maybe? Because they all
That-
go there to get.
Yeah, when you say you have trouble reaching this demographic, does that mean making contact, or does that mean getting them to listen?
Both. in reaching this demographic of the ranchette, is that making a contact or getting them to attend education thing, or it's both. There doesn't seem to be a contact for them unless they're the avid gardeners. You have a contact through them in like OSU Extension a lot of times, and we have given presentation to master gardeners groups just simply on management practices that will help improve water quality that maybe they hadn't thought about. But for the ones that are raising livestock, that's been a much harder group for us to make a contact with.
Do you maintain a list or some sort of listing of addresses or how to contact these people if you wanted to have an event? How are you collecting that information to know how to target an event?
Well, I know I've talked to like the OSU Extension people, and of course, they have their sign-in sheets. And they're really good about when we want to do something of sending out a notification in their monthly newsletter. But again, these people generally work. They can't take time off, or maybe they have never even got on that list. So, you can drive by and maybe they'll have their address on the mailbox and maybe they won't.